Hey folks, it's Mr. Shadow here, and someone commented on a recent video of mine saying that double taxation is illegal. And I beg to differ. Double taxation is actually very legal, and not understanding that can cost you thousands of dollars if you are not going about it the appropriate way. If you are living abroad, again, this is something that you're going to want to pay attention to. Now, what I need folks to understand is that there are tax treaties in place, and those describe exactly who gets paid, when, first, how, etc. So today, what I figured I'd do is walk us through several examples so I can explain it. I'm going to use real numbers. And what I want you to do is pay attention to each example because I'm going to change variables. That way, I'm covering the basis for everyone, even if that particular country might not be the country that you're going to. Here's the core issue, right? US taxes are based on citizenship and where you live. They're enforced by the IRS, Internal Revenue Service, and most countries base this off your residence. So if you're a US citizen and a resident of a foreign nation, then both tax systems apply. That's ultimately how double taxation happens, not illegally. It is by design. Now, many of these tax treaties actually work in your favor, and that's why we're going to go over the examples. 95,000 in yearly income for a single filer, no fancy deductions. Sometimes we'll do Social Security with side income, other times remote work. We're going to span several categories along with several countries so I can give you details on each and capture a very wide array of people, countries, and taxes. Let's get into it. Treaties decide who taxes first, who taxes second, whether you get credits, whether certain income is somehow exempt. Now, this depends on your income type, your residency, and your citizenship. So our first scenario here is going to be $45,000 in Social Security income, $50,000 in side income, however that could be. Again, we're going to be fairly general here, but that's the total of 95K, and this person's going to live in France. They are a resident in France. Now, keep in mind, the US taxes up to 85% of your Social Security income. So in France, most of your US Social Security income does become taxable in the United States. They're going to take roughly $15,000. Now, France typically taxes worldwide income, but under a tax treaty, they don't directly tax your Social Security income. There is a caveat, though. France still uses that Social Security income to determine your overall tax bracket. That means that that 45,000 in Social Security puts you in a higher tax bracket. So to round it out with some simple math, the US would take roughly 15,000 in taxes, federal. France would take another 4,000 to 6,000 in any local income because of their higher tax brackets. $19,000 to $21,000 in total taxes paid to two separate countries. Same income, two systems touching you. Let's look at that exact same case, but in Panama. Panama actually uses a territorial taxation system, meaning they only tax you on the money that is earned within their ecosystem. That means that your US Social Security is not touched at all. However, US, they still want their cut, so that's 15,000 gone to the United States federal government. Good news is, compared to France, where you have that extra taxation, you're not going to have that in Panama. So you're actually free and clear at 15K. The only way that that would change is if you are making money actually working within Panama in some way. And in this use case, that's not our assumptions. So 15K is the total. For our next example, we're going to use Portugal, but we're going to change things up a bit. We're going to assume that we are a remote worker, but we are a resident in Portugal. So that means we are a Portuguese tax resident. Now, Portugal does tax worldwide income, meaning the base that you're taxed on will be that full 95K, and it could come out to roughly 24 to $28,000. The good news here is that you have options so that you're not actually double taxed in the United States. The way you would do this is using a tax exclusion because you are that permanent resident inside of Portugal. In that case, you would owe $0 to the USA. Simple wrap up. That means, like I said, 24 to $28,000 going to Portugal for taxes, but zero to the US. That's still about a quarter of your income. Now, if you want a full video on how to use things like the Foreign Earned Income Exclusion Act, I can definitely do that separately, but I want to keep this conversation packed together. Using that type of exemption is the way that we were able to say that you don't owe taxes to the United States government. Just want to throw that out there. So again, comment in the videos if that's something that you want to see. In our next case, we are going to choose Spain, and we're going to switch up the income just a little bit. We'll say we're getting $40,000 in disability and another 55K coming from some other way. Again, not getting specific. We want to keep things fairly general for comparison's sake. Now, Spain does not directly tax disability, but like France in the Social Security example, they do use that income for the total tax bracket. And what that's going to do is raise the amount that you actually owe on that secondary 55,000 because your tax bracket will be based on the overall 95,000. Stick with me here. So in this example, the USA would take roughly 12 to 15,000 in taxes. Spain would take another 5 to 8,000, giving you a total of 17 to $23,000 owed in taxes to two separate countries, showing us that even when disability is not taxed locally, it still ends up costing you. All right, we got two more examples here. This one's going to be Mexico, and we're going to look at residency versus digital nomad. Same 95K income. Because this is where some people get confused. Because Mexico doesn't have a specific digital nomad visa, but many people do stay using their visitor status or some type of temporary residency while keeping their tax residency outside of Mexico. So we're going to split it into the two paths. Path one being you're a Mexican resident. Mexico then taxes you on your worldwide income. In the US, you're going to get credits, so you'd owe about zero. I'm estimating Mexico's tax impact at about $24,000 to $28,000. So that would be your total for both countries. Now, in path two, you're living in Mexico, but more on a digital nomad setup, meaning you're physically there, but you're not established as a Mexican tax resident. Therefore, Mexico won't tax your foreign earned income. However, in that case, the US does, and so you're going to pay somewhere around $15,000. Same income, same country, different residency status, and that alone can carry a $10,000 difference or so. Now, before people come in and say you can't work from another country if you don't have some type of visa permit, I want to add some clarification. Yes, if you are on a visitor status or a temporary residency in Mexico, generally, you cannot work legally for a Mexican employer or earn any type of Mexican sourced income without proper authorization. But that's not what we're talking about here. In this example, you're working for a foreign company being paid outside of Mexico's ecosystem with no Mexican clients. Immigration rules and tax rules are separate, totally separate systems. Immigration cares who you work for. Tax authorities care where your tax residence is and where your work is sourced. So, in plain English, working for a Mexican company on a tourist visa, not allowed. Working remotely for a US company while temporarily inside of Mexico, different category. That's why I keep saying residency status is everything. Last example here, we are going to use Thailand. Switch things up a bit. We're going to assume that you are a Thai resident, but being paid the equivalent of 95,000 USD in Thai baht. In that case, Thai taxes first, we can estimate around $19,000 to $23,000. Then we would apply the US credits, and that would take us to zero paid to the United States. And in this very simple wrap up, that leaves you with that roughly $19,000 to $23,000 owed exclusively to the Thai government. So here's the truth. Double taxation is the default. Treaties, exclusions, and credits, that's how you get reductions. Depending on your country and situation, the same $95,000 income can cost you this amount in various countries. Same income, completely different outcomes. I always say the smartest move isn't just leaving the US, it's choosing countries with intention. That's how you protect income. That's how you stay mobile. And most importantly, it's how you stop guessing. A quick note, people keep asking me about dual citizenship and how that can affect things. It does change everything. So if you do want a dedicated video on that, again, drop it in the comments and I'll make one. Again, I'm Mr. Shadow. I help people move abroad with a plan. Check me out on my website at brightshadow2k.com, where you can find access to my Discord, the How to Move Abroad ebook, as well as free guides for planning. I'd love to have you in the Discord. We really have a great group going. And as always, I hope it helps.